Multiple shots of cold air are on the way, and one of these could be an Arctic outbreak. Of course, with cold air, you have increased winter weather chances too, so we'll speak on that. And then we'll have an entire segment giving the latest information that we have on December. There's a lot of chatter about the month of December and how it could bring increased cold and winter weather chances across areas of the country. So here to give you all the latest information. My name is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything I can pray about or pray over, please drop it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's go over temperatures first. And we're going to start all these graphics off with next Tuesday morning, November the 25th. So we're fully into Thanksgiving week. And let's get going. Most of the country is dealing with above average temperatures, and this is reflected by the warmer colors you see on your screen, you know, the orange, the reds, the pinks, things like that. But you can see some colder air starting to slip into the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, things like that. And as we continue to move forward, we get into Thanksgiving Eve. Some cold air is starting to break out across areas in the middle of the country. This is cold front number one. I don't think this is going to bring an Arctic outbreak or anything like that. Sort of just your normal run-of-the-mill cold front that you see in late November. But, it'll certainly be a bit of a shock to your system if you've gotten really used to the warmer than average temperatures across the country that we're dealing with for most of the country right now. But as we start to move into Thanksgiving, the 27th, a lot of cold air begins to overspread to the east. I think it's going to be a really tough forecast for local Mets across the eastern seaboard. Where's this cold front going to be? Is it going to be much warmer than average for your Thanksgiving days? Are going to be colder than average? It's going to be a tough one, but this is just a few to several degrees below average. So like I said, not any kind of crazy cold air, I don't think, with this first cold front. It could be very cold though across the northern plains and the Rockies. The west begins to warm up, and this cold blast eventually makes it all the way to the eastern seaboard as we get into the last weekend of November, the 28th, 29th, 30th. And as we continue to move forward, it looks like that last weekend is going to remain chilly across the eastern U.S. And then we see signs of Arctic air. Now you see this purple and just different shades of blue here. This is well below average temperatures. How cold are these temperatures? Let's not worry about that right now until we work ourselves a little bit closer to this to see if it's actually going to get into that forecast range, right? But check out the gradient. That is an Arctic boundary. Locals call these blue northers, and it's when you have a dramatic drop in temperatures behind a frontal boundary. And there's a real possibility of this. Euro AI really honking the horn at the idea of this. And I think that it's very possible based off the blocking we're seeing on the top of the Earth right now that's about to unfold with that sudden stratospheric warming. But let's continue to move here. But that Arctic boundary drops like a hammer all the way down to the south central U.S. And we begin to introduce December. This is the first morning of December, Monday. And I mean, well above average temperatures across the eastern U.S., well below across the middle of the country. And this is dangerous cold air if this verifies. Okay, and does this make it to the eastern U.S.? You can see there's just a slow crawling boundary right into here. And then you see something brewing behind it. And this next cold air, and I know we're really far out, 15 days, looks like it's going to position itself and beat down the ridge. But this drop in cold air, I think this favors the MJO phase that we think we're going to be in early December. But that is an Arctic hammer right there for sure. And just take a look here at temperatures off this model run. And this is just an operational one. I just want you guys to really get a good idea. I know because everybody wants to see, well, I don't understand what you mean by temperature anomalies compared to average. You got to know what your average temperature is to this time of the year. And we'll focus more on that as we get closer. But here's a great example on this individual model run, not a forecast, for example, for like Sunday, November the 30th. This is what this model run is showing. It wants to be in the mid 80s in Houston, but in Amarillo, 11 degrees. Now, we've seen fronts like this before, but this is a true what you call blue northern. You see these a lot in November, December. Not saying this is going to happen, but this is one heck of an Arctic front. Does the Euro model show this? And we'll start off with Tuesday, November the 25th once again. Well above average temperatures dominating most of the country. The Euro has now picked up on what the Euro AI model has been showing for almost a week now, and that's this first cold front. Nothing too wild about this, even though, as we start to get into Black Friday, November the 28th, I mean, this is some pretty cold temperatures, several degrees below average. we're going to get some widespread freezes and just highs in maybe the 30s and 40s, pretty far south. South is Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, probably not that far, but we're going to get some cold days, I think, the last weekend of November. So if you're one of those people who just wait till a couple days after Thanksgiving to put up your Christmas stuff, the weather is definitely going to cooperate with you in the eastern and central U.S. So first cold blast moves in and out, and still, kind of going into the last day and the first day of December, still dealing with below average temperatures, just a few degrees. But does the Euro show that Arctic boundary? Not really. For example, if you go back to what December 1st is showing on the Euro AI model, that's what it's showing the morning of December 1st. This is what the Euro is showing. Huge difference. Shows some cold air slipping into the plains, but it ain't nothing compared to what the Euro AI model is showing. In fact, it's kind of nuking the entire lower 48 with above average temperatures. So if the Euro adjusts to the AI with this second Arctic blast, man, I think we're having a new change in the way we look at these model runs. And the AI, I know nobody wants to hear that, is starting to take over some things. I don't think it's there yet. But listen, the Euro AI ensemble, okay, pretty much backs up its operational run. We're dealing with above average temperatures on the 26th across the east. Here comes the signal for that first cold blast developing across the central and eastern U.S. And I will note, this first cold blast was once upon a time showing up for the western U.S. This has really shifted to the central and eastern U.S. But these are some colder anomalies showing up in the green. That's 10, 15 degrees below average as we're getting going for our Friday morning, the 28th. So, if you're in the eastern U.S., east central U.S., Black Friday shop in the morning of the 28th, it's going to be quite cold, I think. And it just looks like a cold last weekend of November. It really does across the east. And it's picking up on the signal of that next cold blast. And the signal is strong too. This is pretty impressive for ensemble guidance. That's 10, 15, as much as 20 degrees below average with this secondary cold blast that looks awfully impressive. This is the first day of December. These, 20, 25 degrees below average. So the Euro AI ensemble is picking up on what its operational run is showing. And what's interesting to me is the Euro ensemble, which is one of the most respected model runs you can look at out there. Okay, it's one of the best things, right? It picks up on that first cold blast. There it is, taking over the central and eastern U.S. I really don't think this is going to be anything too crazy, but it's going to be very cold, I think, for across most of the east the last week of November. But it does not agree with its operational run with the second cold blast. It shows it. Here it comes as we're getting into December the 1st. It shows that Arctic blast coming in. It's a smoothed out look. Of course, it's not as crazy, but you compare December 1st, okay, with, let's go and look at this. December 1st, and it's going to flip to the 06Z, December the 1st, okay? Much warmer than average temperatures, does show a little bit of cold air dipping down, but you compare it to the ensemble run, and it has the cold air much further south on this. So you can tell that the Euro ensemble has a lot of members showing a pretty strong cold front dropping south. So, and this is reflected. If we look at the upper pattern here, this big area in blue, this is a trough area of low pressure. It could potentially bring some storminess, not always, but it always brings a cold front and a shot of air. And that's exactly what this will do. And this is for Thanksgiving. You see this big blob of blue, some purple in there. That's a pretty strong trough that digs down, really amplifies, brings a shot of cold air. And then the Euro AI ensemble really drops the hammer across the west and the middle of the country. And it really anchors this trough, like I said, over the western sections of the lower 48. Spikes a ridge in the eastern U.S. That honestly fits the MJO pattern that we're probably going to be in. Around this time frame, phase 7, getting out of phase 6 into phase 7, it fits this well. So I think we are going to have a warm up the first few, maybe several days of December for the eastern U.S. after a cool down the last several days of November, or something like that. So as we continue to move forward, you can see something shifting though up here as cold air is about to drop down, and this next shot of cold air could beat down this nasty southeast ridge that I just think we're going to struggle with at times. And you got a spiking PNA, positive PNA, a ridge over the west all the way up to Alaska. You see this. To me, this tells me that we're probably, see this ridge spiking up here, we're probably going to get cold air that's about to move into the eastern U.S. And I think the trough orientation is probably going to switch to like this. Okay, maybe not that far south, but you get what I'm saying. So, I mean, yeah, are we seeing any kind of storminess with this? Well, I think we need to watch for a storm system early next week. Could be a warm storm system, not a lot of cold air involved. So this is going to be mostly rain, and we get into the 26th, the Thanksgiving Eve, and you see that 540 line dropping. But, you know, the Euro not showing any kind of crazy winter storm anymore. In fact, the entire work week period of, unless you got next week off, my wife and kids do. I do not, just Thanksgiving and Black Friday. But it shows a pretty quiet weather. Cold air goes over the Great Lakes, and we get some lake effect snows, you know, as we end next week. But no significant storm system. But I'm telling you, if the Arctic boundary is realized, like what the Euro AI model is showing, what the Euro is showing right here, this could be a crazy storm system involved with a lot of cold air as we get our way into December. And the Euro AI model shows that solution. In fact, let's make sure we have the latest Euro AI model, because the 06Z run has ran. And this is next Monday. It does show a storm system. I think we could have some rain across the central to the eastern U.S. So if you're traveling, you know, to grandma's house or whatever you may be doing for Thanksgiving, we could definitely have a storm system over the middle to eastern portion of the country. But the cold air follows behind us. So I think this will be mainly rain. Might even have a risk of severe weather. If you see me messing with my nose, guys, my allergies are definitely getting to me this morning. Nothing crazy, but cold air follows behind it. Where's that Arctic boundary? Here it comes. Huge Arctic front drops down with a 999 low pressure, throwing a lot of moisture back into this cold air. And I know it shows in green, but this is snow up here. You know, in the Euro AI model, we have a couple sites we can look at that predicts what the moisture is on the Euro AI, but I'm not going to go into all that right now. But you see a lot of this moisture up here. That is snow. That's a huge winter weather event. And here comes a low pressure popping off the boundary. And just to show you, we can show you how much snow the Euro AI model drops. We just can't really show you the evolution of the precipitation. But this is how much snow, and this is the actual OOZ. Yeah, this is how much snow the Euro AI model drops. Let's back it up a little bit. Here it comes. This is between now and the last weekend of November. Watch how it really fills in that gap big time right into here. So, oh, guys, I'm sorry I keep stopping there. My allergies are really messing with me. I think I got a sneeze coming, but it won't come. But, you know, you can see how the snow really fills in across the middle of the country, and it shows a kind of a, I wouldn't say a winter storm signal yet. Hard to call it a signal, but there's something there if that boundary drops down with multiple areas of energy popping off the boundary. But certainly a signal for a lot of rain across the southern tier of the country. And a lot of this is for what's going to happen today, and we'll discuss today's weather at the end of the video. But yeah, I think we're going to have an active pattern upcoming. And you look at the ensemble run all the way through the end of the next 15 days, and you can see things begin to really fill in after Thanksgiving across the middle of the country. You know, between now and Thanksgiving, not a super huge winter weather pattern across the middle of the country, but things change as we round off November and get to the early portion of December. And you can see how the gap really fills in. And, you know, the eastern U.S., I don't see much of any kind of winter weather. We got a little snow falling out there, I think, across PA and northern New Jersey this morning. But, you know, you can see after we get past Thanksgiving, there is some signal, mainly for the Great Lakes region, for the lake effect snows, and maybe a little northwest flow snow kind of signal showing up here. But altogether, you're not seeing any crazy signal, you know, any kind of out of the ordinary signal for snow. So this leads us into a deeper portion of December. Okay, and once again, if you just clicked on this timestamp, just wanted to hear about December, we're going to start off where we just left off, what we just spent about 15 minutes on. And you see this big blob of blue, this is lower pressure, a trough. Cold air is associated with this, and sometimes areas of energy can pop off the base of the trough and eject north or northeastward or wherever they go. So we're starting off December the 2nd with a ridge across the eastern U.S. Like I said, I think we're going to get that cold front at the end of the month, and then we're going to have a warm up across the eastern U.S. And I'll just love when that happens. That is fantastic. So, you know, that's a total rhythm killer there. But we're going to keep it rolling here. Most people would edit that out, but, you know, that's just cool stuff there. But anyways, we're going to keep this going here. And as we move forward, you're going to see the orientation of this trough really change. It kind of bowls out here, and a ridge signature begins to spike across the western U.S. And some cold air, I really think starts to get introduced more so in the central to eastern U.S. And you don't really see that ridge signature anymore across the southeast. And then as we start to get several days in December, the 9th, 10th, things like that, you can see a ridge begins to show up over the western U.S., areas of the central U.S. too. And, we see lower heights over the eastern U.S., blocking on top. And I do think chances across the east begin to improve, especially as we get deeper into December. We get into phase 8, which is what I'm about to tell you. But you see the blue area over the northeast, mid-Atlantic, and even areas across the northern sections of the lower 48. I think this is going to introduce an opportunity to really flood areas of the eastern U.S. with a lot of cold air. I really think cold air is going to dip down here. And we're going to have the opportunity for storm systems right into here. And who knows, maybe we get, a southeast, a deep south, a rare December snow event. I'm not going to rule it out. But you can see how it changes, right? This is the first week of December, dealing with, slightly above average temperatures across the deep south, southeast after the first cold front. Most of the northern section of the country, the western U.S., is cold. And then, it starts to warm up a little bit across the west and the central U.S., and there's a little bit of a cool down as we get kind of to the mid portion of December across areas of the eastern U.S., but it really begins to show up as we get closer to Christmas. Well below average temperatures begin to show up, not even for, just the eastern U.S., but, it cools back down for the western U.S. too. And this honestly supports phase 8. Phase 8 is, almost cold across the board, meaning the entire lower 48. So there is some signs that certainly point to this. And, I know a lot of people just want to hear about snow, but, this is the middle of the country. And this is between now and the next 15 days. We just showed you this. But watch what changes as we go between the 3rd all the way, another 15 days, all the way to like the 19th. It's a pretty big change, right? This, bang. This. See how much it drops? And you might think, well, that's because it's winter. The deeper you get into winter, the higher chances for winter weather. And I totally agree with you. But I also think that this is a little bit more of a significant signal here for that snow line to drop. And same thing with the eastern U.S. Not a hefty signal as we get a few days into December for snow far south. Just a normal kind of run-of-the-mill areas. Even the I-95 corridor doesn't look impressive. But we get 15 more days into December all the way up to the 29th. And you can see the difference there? Bang, drops south. And then we extend this even 15 more days or so, and it drops south even more, all the way down to Tennessee, North Carolina, and areas of the deep south and southeast. So I do think things begin to change a lot. And, everything that we just talked about is, as far as the cold blast that potentially can unfold across the middle of the country, and just multiple shots of Arctic air, I think will be possible with the sudden stratospheric warming event that is likely going to unfold across the northern hemisphere, across the polar region. The areas you see in the warmer colors here, this is above average temperatures aloft in the polar region. So what this does is disrupts the polar vortex and dislodges cold Arctic air to the south. And I think we're going to have multiple rounds of this, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not really caring much about talking about this much. I'm more focused on this, the MJO and how it evolves. And if I click on this, this is the part that could confuse people, so just, follow along with me here. I'm going to kind of draw on this a little bit. So phase 7, 6, 5, and 4, and even kind of 3, and I haven't circled 3 in the other videos, but these phases right here, 3 can work, but phase 7, 6, 5, and 4, and 3. 3 and 7 could work, but these are warm phases. Warmer than average temperatures are probably going to be the dominating weather factor over colder than average temperatures. And 8, 1, and 2 are colder phases for most of the country. 7 can work out, and it will for certain areas of the country. But 7 is a high signal for an eastern southeastern ridge. 8 is the glory phase for December. So you might ask, well, Mitch, are we heading towards phase 8? I'm a winter weather fan, and I am too. Well, first off, let's start off where we're at. We're in this jumbled up mess right here. And I say jumbled up because you can't even see the numbers. Like this 8 right here, that's November 8th, which of course is behind us now. We're at November 19th. And the 19 is somewhere in here. In fact, it's right here actually. So we're almost in a null stage. So 19 is right here. And we're going to just kind of hang out in this area for the next week. And then you see 27 show up. Okay, that's November the 27th. That puts us firmly into phase 7. So that's in the next week or so, around Thanksgiving. And then we go 29th, and then you see that 1 right there. That is December. So December 1, and it goes all the way to about the 18th. This area in purple, this is December. So we kind of cruise through phase 7. It does show kind of a jumbling up, if you will, into phase 7. We need to untangle that knot and just progress into 8. But it does show a slow ride into phase 8 as we get to the middle portion of the month. And 15th, 17th, 18th. We really need this a little bit more amplified, so we need this little squiggly line to kind of go out here. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, right? You know, as long as we get into phase 8, there's a chance that we can slow ride this through 2 really favorable phases through one of the best climo times of the year, which is late December, early January. It's the shortest days of the year. You know, of course, you know, I think the 3rd week of January is always considered like the coldest time of the year. But, you know, when you got the shorter days, of course, winter weather chances are higher at night, you know, when you got colder temperatures. But there's a chance, and it's going to take time to work towards. We're going to continue to talk about it. We're going to continue to figure it out. But there's a chance that, you know, we're going to work through some very cold and favorable MJO phases during the most favorable climo time of the year. So we're going to continue to try to figure this one out. As far as today's weather, we got a system slipping through areas of the mid-Atlantic, southern areas of the Northeast. We could have some heavy snow falling right now. Northern New Jersey areas of PA. Might switch to some wet snow in New York City here soon if it hasn't already. Let me know what you're seeing in this area. Much needed, very isolated shower activity across the Southeast. If you're getting any, consider yourself lucky. Man, my nose is killing me. The Southwest, we got moisture skirting across the area. This is going to really introduce a very stormy day across the South Central U.S. We got energy up here across the Dakotas. Minnesota, it's so warm in these areas that this is just rain. Typically, we start to see more so snow this time of the year. But moving past this, watches, warnings, and advisories. A lot of fog because, and this is indicated in the gray, because there's just a lot of moisture out there. Flood watches are up in areas of central Texas. Watch out down there. Southwestern areas of the U.S., flood watches are up. And some winter weather advisories are up in certain areas also. Big area that has a risk of severe weather. Not necessarily, you know, a risk of significant severe weather, but the large area runs a risk at severe thunderstorms. And this is stretching from, you know, areas of New Mexico all the way down to the hill country of Texas, into areas of the panhandle of Texas through Oklahoma, North Texas, all the way up into Joplin, areas of Missouri and Kansas, and western Arkansas. So we have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. There is a 2% risk of a tornado down here near Kerrville, San Angelo. And then the rest of the stuff is just a risk of some hail and some damaging winds. I could see an upgrade to a slight risk somewhere into here. We just got to watch. And then the risk of excessive rainfall. Watch down here. Of course, we know what happened in Kerrville. So just be careful with the risk of flash flooding down here for sure today. That's a 15% risk near Interstate 10 for rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. The Southeast today, not a whole lot to speak on. If you do get some showers, for example, in the Piedmont, the Carolinas, consider yourself very lucky. It has not rained at my house here in central South Carolina in the entire month of November so far. And here we are almost at November the 20th. Pretty ridiculous. But nothing really else to speak on. Northeast, this energy will kind of head out the region and we'll be done with it. And that'll be all she wrote. And really, it'll turn out to be a nice rest of the afternoon, just cool. But the South Central U.S., widespread thunderstorms will be ongoing, and some of these will pack a punch. You see these thunderstorms. Could have some supercells down here. Big chunk of moisture getting slung up through New Mexico. Higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. But as we start to get to the night, and really into tomorrow morning, we're going to wake up to widespread rains across New Mexico, southern areas of Colorado. Could have a line of storms training across areas of southern Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas. A lot of moisture. like I said, if you continue to see my nose do this, I am fighting off my allergies right now. And I knew they were going to cause me issues this morning. But rainfall between now and the next 48 hours. Multiple inches of rain are possible. This is an area of the country that's been very quiet over the last few months. But I do think it becomes more active. It shouldn't be anything life-threatening or anything like that. But a lot of much-needed rain will fall across these areas. So definitely get ready. But, there's a signal down here, in southern areas of Texas for multiple inches of rain. So be aware of that. North Central U.S. is what we're looking at. Not a whole lot. Northern Minnesota, some moisture cruising on through, and then we get into tomorrow morning, and just pretty much a quiet day up here. Western U.S., a lot of moisture shooting across the southwest. Arizona, New Mexico, another system, much warmer, moving across areas of the western U.S. And But, we're just going to continue to have multiple rounds of storm systems across the west, I think, for the foreseeable future. Temperatures, big temperature boundary across areas of the Mid-South, the Mid-Atlantic. I mean, if you're driving down interstate and thinking like Kentucky, Virginia, you're going to go from chilly winter-like temperatures to, fall-like conditions. Early fall-like conditions, 80s, 70s across the Deep South and locked into winter up here in the Northeast. So temperatures across the West still warmer than average, across the board. So let's do our Bible devotion. This morning we're in James chapter 2, verse 14. I'm probably just going to read until I guess we just need to stop, right? It says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not have works? Can such faith save him? If a brother or sister is without clothes and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, stay warm, and be well fed,' but you don't give them what the body needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead by itself." And I think we've done this one before. Maybe we haven't, maybe we have. I don't think it matters too much. But, I said the faith that you say that you have has to be alive and effective. Being obedient to God is living out our faith. It's not just a belief and then that's it. Your actions must show it. Our actions to non-believers could be used as a seed to help pull others to Jesus. And, I said faith is an internal thing also, not just an outward thing. Bad things are going to happen, but, it's an internal thing too. So, are you leaning on God during the tough times, or are you just folding every time something bad happens? But I know Scripture here really talking more so about that outward thing. And when it says, in verse 15 about clothes and stuff like that, I oftentimes think of it like this. If you're driving down the road, and I'm not saying you should stop and give a homeless person or somebody, asking for something on the side of the road at a stoplight every time, do whatever you feel like you're called to do in that situation. It's a you and God thing. But, I do think that we're not called in a situation where, you stop at a stoplight, there's a guy on the side of the road, homeless, begging for food, money, whatever it may be. And you roll down the window and you say, "Hey man, why don't you go get you something to eat?" And then you roll back at the window and then the light turns green, you drive away. I think that kind of hits on that there. So, it always goes back to what we say, somebody's watching you, and how you handle a situation, how you go through adversity. And I think that when it says faith without works is dead, guys, I do believe the more you do things like that, the more you want to do it. I think it feeds off one another, and I think it's supposed to be like that. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll do it again tomorrow morning.